All right, so 4 o'clock, we'll call this meeting to order. Are there any public comments? I take it that there is none, so we'll move on to our list. And we need to, first of all, get an update on the developer land request. I understand we've had a few more things moving around with that.
Yeah, this is a moving target for us.
Yeah.
As you know, finding the boundary, the correct boundary has been a challenge. And I want to say, first of all, Belton ISD, Belton ISD, we keep communicating on this one. So, today, actually, I emailed Bobby Ott and told him where we were at on this one, so he has the same information. But anyway, we had to go back to the original deed, and on the original deed, because we had that discrepancy between the TEA document and the BelCAD document. So everybody's in agreement now on where that line is. So the next step in this one is when that line changed based upon the original deed, which is different from TEA and BelCAD. The original request for Keela was about 4 acres for the swap, and now it's 9 acres. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but there is law that if your swap exceeds 1/10 of 1%, that you can still do it, but it's a more formal process and procedure to do that. So that's one little wrinkle in it, but the other wrinkle in it is how do we determine that value? Because BelCAD, and correct me if I say anything that is incorrect, because BelCAD does not assess that property because it's undeveloped. And so Terry Covington and I have been visiting back and forth, and I missed that meeting today because I had other things, but we will meet to see if we can assign a fair market value. And I'll tell you, working with realtors, on something like this in the past, it's hard. Some people are very comfortable doing that, some are not comfortable doing that as realtors, and so I don't know where that will go. But right now, to get that to see if we're at that 1/10 of 1%, we've got to have something to look at. And so that's where we're at on that one. Now, on the 0.9 acres, Robert, you want to tell them about Colin Robertson on that one?
Yeah, we've asked Colin Robertson to take off that piece affects the site in any significant way with respect to building probably an elementary school there at some future date. So they're studying that right now. We're supposed to meet tomorrow. And should be able to provide that.
We'll let you know tomorrow what it is. And as soon as Jennifer and Angela are still kind of looking at the law and stuff on the 1/10 of 1%, and you're trying to get, I think, our appraised value for the whole district, that was the first step. And then when I visit with Terry, then I will get that number to Jennifer, and then we'll go from there. So depending on what O'Connell Robertson says, if they say it does not affect the master planning for the 0.9 acre, which is just a purchase of that, we will probably, with your permission, bring that to the January board meeting and not bring the swap yet, because I don't think we're gonna have all that ready yet.
Okay, sounds like we're definitely getting
I'm trying.
a lot of information and working the process to its fullest extent. All right, so David, update on our capital improvements list and our timeline for completion. It looks like we are steadily moving forward.
We are moving forward, things are turning red, so
Yes.
I think we have about 40 items complete now.
Mhm.
And I think in your packet there's a list of things we're doing over the
Yeah.
Christmas
yes.
breaks.
Yeah.
We've got several. Most of this is subcontract work, upgrading some restrooms, et cetera, a lot of concrete work. So that will even take some more. We've got several things that are scheduled that will be mainly summer work. So that's already, purchase orders have been issued, and we're just waiting on the kids to leave so we can do a great deal of the work.
David, I know gyms were a huge concern. What is your timeline on those?
Well, I got this afternoon about 3 o'clock, got the drawings from Michael Mars.
Okay.
So we've got all that, so we are ready to go ahead and purchase the equipment, get the concrete pads poured.
Okay.
So I think we can probably start that in end of January, 1st February time frame, and have it certainly going in the spring.
I've just, side note, I've done some commercial work, not a lot, but I've done some projects that Morris was in charge of. He's good.
He is just,
I like that.
Michael is just down to earth, and he doesn't go crazy, and
Yeah, real, yeah.
yeah.
It's a local dude.
Yeah, like
It's a
him.
vested
Yeah.
interest.
Yep. All right, well, that is very exciting. Definitely like seeing all the red on the list every time.
Me too.
And now when you drive the campuses, you're starting to see those projects crop up.
Yeah, yeah.
As the speed bumps work, it's South Belton.
Yep.
I get used to them.
Fencing at Chisholm Trail looks good, so, yeah.
And I walked in, the principal from High Point was at the front, Amy, and she was talking about her fence going.
Yeah.
So it's still, we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
thank you.
and, we got the, layout sort of finalized at, Charter Oak yesterday with the principal and Doug Taylor, so
Good.
they'll be doing that over the break as well.
You have a question there, Jeff?
Yeah, about one, because I got set pictures on it, we have facilities committee. What's the problem with the roof at Sparta and the leaks?
Well, there's a long history there.
Oh, I know, it's been replaced or fixed.
It was replaced, totally replaced in 2014
Mhm.
by a roofing contractor that I wouldn't have used, but I
Right.
did. It's still under warranty, which is a good thing. So every time we have a leak, we turn it in. And we actually have Empire Roofing coming back and making the repairs now. And
Okay.
they do a lot of district work, and
Okay.
they're doing a good job. Unfortunately, we met with the warranty company, we tried to get them to do a broader scope of work, but they just said, no, we'll just do it as they pop up. But in my opinion, there's a problem with that cap sheet. It's just separating.
Mhm.
It's not uniform. Sometimes they're north and south, sometimes they're east and west, so no rhyme or reason. I think it's just a bad batch of material, but they are standing behind the warranty.
There you go.
So it's just basically fix it as it comes up.
Right.
All right, so next on the agenda is the Belton High School baseball field lighting, and y'all, I guess remember last meeting, I was ready to just get it done, and we said, no, we gotta do the bids, well, we've got bids now.
Right.
And then reading up on it, it looks as though that the RK Bass bid is a little bit higher, but that those are the optimum lighting, seems to be better.
It is, and I tell you, I know Michael's probably familiar with ball tracking. So the ball tracking that Musco offers, basically, if you can visualize your tall pole there, you'll have your lights at the top. Ball tracking has a light down about midway of that pole. So at night, if you hit a ball high, your light's down the field. This will actually illuminate the sky, so to speak, so you can track that ball. So,
Safer.
they've used it at a lot of universities. I know Auburn University just put it in. So it is more money. My personal preference is Arcade Bass for several reasons. They're local. I think they'll do a good job. Musco lighting, I just don't think you can beat. You know, we tried to use Musco out at the Lake Belton and we just couldn't afford it. Musco lighting is premier.
So the ball tracking is only on the Arcade Bass proposal?
Yes, the other company, there's two things the other company's gonna do. They were gonna change the lights and not the light brackets. Arcade Bass is changing the brackets as well.
So it's 21,000-ish, 20.
The Delta is 22, yeah.
Yeah, so, now Jennifer, are we bound by any kind of, we must pick the cheapest bid thing, so
Yeah.
we can do what's best?
Yeah.
Correct, because we did not go out for what's considered a CSP.
Right.
So.
And also our relationship with Bass, because of the projects that they're working on, probably make things even better.
And this is a cooperative quote and not a formal RFQ or RFP.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
So we can go with what we consider best value.
There you go.
And Musco, even though they're just providing the material, so to speak, they are based out of, they have an office in Round Rock. So they're local, Arcade Bass, you know, I can call Andy at 11 o'clock at night, he'll pick up the phone and answer.
Right, something to be said for that too. I like that.
Mike, you got any questions?
Well, I think also the other advantage, like we talked about last time, it's an 8-pole system as opposed to 4. The pole height isn't as high as a new installation would be, so they're, either company's kind of working around those properties of the field. But I think also when you look at having the drivers located where you can get to them with a ladder and not have to bring a lift in, because lifts, the boom lifts tear up fields. And they're also, if, you know, I know we're looking at purchasing one, but currently we have to rent those anytime we need them, and it's very expensive. So over the course of the life of repairs and things like that, not having to bring a boom lift in every time you need to get to the driver.
And RK Bass is also gonna put in a new, light contactor cabinet with a key switch. I don't know if you remember that other one, this Lynn sort out of 45.
Yeah.
We're gonna clean all that up.
So if we can bring this to the January 20th meeting, is there any possibility that anything can be moved on this spring?
Well, I asked that question, of course, Andy said if you let me know tomorrow, I'll have it in before spring training starts, but, January probably push us into the March and April timeframe.
And there's no good faith handshake, we got this, we need to wait till 20 before that goes down, then it works.
We do need to wait for water.
That's how it needs to happen,
Water.
okay,
Yes.
alright. Still gotta
January
Being
20th.
compliant about policy.
keep me in track, Jennifer, gotta keep me there. Alright, so good, I'm excited about that.
Okay.
That's been something that's been needed for quite a while. Safety number one to me. Alright, so next is the purchase of the vaping sensors. I've been doing some research on some of these things, and obviously something very much needed with the epidemic that we're having in our secondary schools. But I understand that we've kinda we've got some technology things, kinda working some things out, but we're moving forward with this, is that correct?
So Robert and Mike.
Can we just kind of go with the review of the sensor itself first, and then kind of get into kind of the logistics of how we want to try to phase it. There's really two companies from our research has shown that's kind of in the market of this right now on the scale that we're talking about. We like the Halo Smart Sensor better, and it's about 2/3 of the way into your packet, or really it's the last 3 pages. We like the Halo Smart Sensor, and the primary reason we like the Halo Smart Sensor better is it does differentiate between a nicotine-based vaping products and a THC vape. So when you get the alert, it's gonna tell you you're getting an alert for a THC alert, or you're getting an alert for just a normal nicotine vape alert. It also has several other things. It has a tamper alert, so if a student tries to alter the device, pull it from the wall, throw toilet paper, wet toilet paper to clog it up, you're gonna get a detection for that as well. It also has a decibel meter on it, so if the noise level gets above a preset decibel amount, which would be, screaming, yelling, fighting, those sorts of things going on in the restroom, you're gonna get an alert for that as well. It also has a light sensor, so if the lights are off, you get an alert for that. So if someone's in there messing around, they figured out a way to turn the lights off and up to no good, then you're gonna get an alert on that as well. And with some of the new technology, and I think this is kind of ties hand in hand with what some of our technology questions are, is that there's also ways that you can, it's programmable for certain phrases too. So certain weapons, no, stop, there's certain things that it can detect and send an alert for that too, that it might mean that there's something that you wouldn't want going on in that restroom going on. So that technology, they said, should be in the first quarter of next year. As far as the size, you can see the picture, and they have the diagram. I mean, it basically is about the size of a smoke detector. It installs the same way as like a sheetrock box. If you've ever seen a light sheetrock box, I mean, you have a 5-inch hole saw, you cut a hole in the drop ceiling, the box slides up in, you screw 2 screws, it brings the little wings down, and it's stationary, and then it just has a cable, I call it Ethernet, but the technical term is, what's this cable called? It's 6 cable just plugs into the top, so it doesn't need a AC power source along with the technology cable. It's powered through the technology drop.
And keep in mind, in our bathrooms, we don't have drop ceilings.
Oh yeah, so they're gonna have to be mounted externally with a wire mold probably or something.
But we can still get the wire in there.
Yeah.
Sooner the better.
Yep, and we're moving forward with this, correct? I mean,
Well, there's a technology component to it that I'll let Dr. Mueller discuss, and then I have a couple of new pieces of information that I'll share with y'all as well.
Yeah, we initially thought, well, we'll go to Lake Belton High School and ask the Bartlett Clock to kind of price out putting these in each of the bathrooms there. I think the numbers we're talking about are kind of, for example, at Belton High School, I think we're talking about 18 restrooms times 2, boys and girls, so it's roughly 36 restrooms. Each one of the devices has to be managed individually, as opposed to kind of an enterprise solution where you can manage them as a group. So, what technology is asking is if we could slow implementation enough for them to get some experience. Also, when they talk to the company, most of my information's coming from Daryl Shipper, our technology director. But when they talk to the company's indicating that kind of an enterprise management solution is in the future. They're heading that way, but they don't have it yet. So while we're managing these things one at a time, we want a little bit of experience to see what capacity we have to make sure those things work correctly. So I think the proposal is maybe to start with Belton High School and the middle schools and kind of go from there. At the same time, we will ask Bartlett Clock to go ahead and price out cabling, and it is Cat 6 cable that runs from the device back to the IFD closet. We'll go ahead and ask them to price out that cabling, so we're not doing it.
So, do we have cameras outside of each bathroom? So if the police SRO didn't get there or administrator quick enough, we know who was in there and
Yes.
set off?
Mhm.
And then I
You'll
wonder,
have the time that the alert went off, and then the camera would correspond with who was in that restroom at the time that the alert went off,
it'd
so.
be interesting to see other districts that have used this technology,
That's what I'm curious about.
when that situation happens, when you don't have a human that gets there, how admissible and how that'll hold up to, you know, working its way up the food chain kind of thing.
I've spoken with 2, and then there was also an article in the Waco Tribune Herald,
Yeah.
probably about 3.5 weeks ago,
Mhm.
with other districts that I know 2 local districts that have been using these said that it's greatly decreased the number of restroom incidents they've had since they installed them, so,
What about-
dramatically is
What about overall kids getting in trouble because they're bringing them to school? Is it come down?
I don't have that data, I just know it's cut down on the restroom incidents, so.
All
Yeah, I
right.
would think just virtue of the fact kids know they're there.
Amen.
You'd hope the deterrent would work.
Just a deterrent.
And do they only work if the kids are using them?
Yeah,
So if they're
Yes.
vaping?
right, but that's where they go to vape. That's why all the bathrooms smell like vape.
You know, and we don't have to just put them in bathrooms, but we do know, as Jeff said, that is where they're going right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's kind of like drug dogs. It's not only the intervention side, it's the prevention side. And I think, you know, having these on campuses will certainly prevent, not just now, but in the future, because when THC has gone its path, there'll be something else that comes in its place. And if you're working with the company, then they'll obviously update the machines.
So each one of these costs $841?
Yes, and the two new pieces of information is, I've kind of took what we built the original quote for all the secondary schools and kind of how Doug went campus to campus and did a count and an assessment, and so we're looking at 92 restrooms, and we would like to, when we do buy for the whole district, we probably would want to do about 8 extras. So if we determine there's a really large restroom, we'd like to add a second one in that restroom, or if one does get damaged, or if we decide we need one somewhere that we didn't originally plan for, we would have a few spares. The second quote I gave y'all today would be just to do 30 for Belton High School BHS 9. Is kind of where we're thinking about maybe kicking that off as the original rollout. See how it goes for a short period, and then expand to the middle schools from there. And then if we're happy with the results, and if the management of the technology side is manageable and does get easier with the new operating system, plan on trying to have them in at Lake Belton in the fall as well. But we'd like to go ahead and do 30 for Belton High School and BHS 9 now, and or as soon as we can get approval on it, and go ahead and start the installation of
I'm
those.
curious how you test them.
Well,
Mine's
during the-
vape.
Well, during
I
the
heard school board
presentation,
members did that, Janet.
yeah,
Volunteer you.
Do
You
the-
get caught with it, that's your felony, not mine.
This is Bell County, it's not that hard.
So, do we need to put this on for January 20th to approve the first go around?
Yeah, we,
Probably so, it's less than 50K, so right now, so
Okay.
Jennifer, I don't know that it even needs to go this
It
way.
would not.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
And David, y'all can do all the install in the high school?
I think we can install the devices, yeah, technology probably.
technology will run the drops.
Right,
These
right.
guys don't do it, they just sell the stuff.
They'll
to
sub
us.
it out,
Okay,
most likely.
all right, good.
It's like we said, the sensors aren't the issue, I mean, those are pretty easy.
No, it's the
to sort.
wiring,
That's exactly
Because
right.
we know the wiring's not in place.
That's always the hardest part. Okay, so, I know when this list was first done, the capital improvements list, we've had some administrative changes at Southwest Elementary, and we've also had more boots on the ground over there, and I think, I wanted to know if we had any additional things, maybe that Ms. Schiller and her team have come up with that maybe need to be added to the list, and then talk about, about money and things like that.
Well, actually, Dawn was already around when we were doing our
So that's part of
assessment.
this,
Mhm.
but
So,
have they discovered anything else?
Not as far as the facility,
Okay,
so,
I'm not aware of anything.
yeah, mm-mm.
and we got rid of the smell?
If you drive by there, you're gonna see this ginormous exhaust fan on that wing of the building.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And that's just to pull out from that gap that was
From that
left when they
gap,
put the
yeah.
roof on top of another.
When we were there, I don't know, Janet was with me, when we were giving extra
Yesterday.
things, and, yeah, was it yesterday? My time is not long, but we did not spill it.
Okay.
Really? So that took care of it?
The only reason I
As of
mentioned that, to
yesterday,
put it on the agenda, was I just wanna make sure, it's just, man, just being out there and seeing the passion in those people's faces and knowing, what big of a turnaround they're in the middle of, whatever we can do to let them know that we're behind them 100%.
And I will tell you, the campuses where we've started projects, I'm getting a lot of accolades from the
Yes, you are.
principals, and they appreciate us being there.
How much was the exhaust fan?
Exhaust fan, was zero.
Oh, we had one?
We had one in the warehouse.
Nice.
It was left over. And, I think the boot and the electrical was probably less than $200.
That's great. Wow.
To solve a problem that's been there for a long
It's a
time.
long time. Thank you very
Talking about
much.
Southwest, Dawn is gonna be visiting with David on determining colors for the painting for this coming summer, and then David's also getting some cost estimates on some helium paneling for some of those halls. And that's gonna be more, but most of you are familiar with helium, but it's the laminated panels that go on walls. At least in the high trafficking areas, that would prevent us from having to repaint all the time. Yeah, yeah.
What's the mascot at Southwest?
That's wonderful. What did they?
That's wrong.
No,
I don't remember.
what is it?
Can't remember.
I don't remember.
I probably have to take a picture of that.
Anyway,
Yeah,
that's
okay,
something.
well, we'll figure that out. Good. All right,
It'll really be up to
You
Dawn
don't have to
to
watch that.
determine some colors.
and then strategic planning for facilities, it always comes down to money.
I have some
She's here.
information for you all tonight, but let's start with basically an update of where we are on the 2017 bond.
Kitty money.
Okay, so this is what the business office compiles and uses to basically track the 2017 bond budget. It's simplified here, we do have a lot more categories, but we just summarize it here. And you'll see that in terms of Pittenger Fine Arts Center and Lakewood Gym, those projects have been closed out, finalized, we don't anticipate any additional expenditures. So you can see that the gym was $37,000 under budget to the good, but Pittenger Fine Arts Center came in about $37. over what we anticipated. But that's,
37,000.
I'm sorry, what did I
You
say?
said $37.
Oh, 37,000. Oh, gosh, that's a big difference.
Just because it's on video.
37,000 over what we anticipated, but that's a wash for
Yeah.
our purposes. And if you look at,
Very
Charter Oak.
disappointing that that facility was over budget, very disappointing.
well, we ran into some unknowns that we
Yeah.
had to address.
Yeah, we did.
So, Charter Oak, as you can see, as of, this is as of December 16th, we are about $1.5 million to the good, but we do have some expenditures that we still anticipate coming in.
The window
Just-
coverings and stuff like that, is that gonna be coming out of this? You know, the interior windows, and we've talked about that for security purposes, lockdown things.
We had
It
not talked
can.
about those under this, but it can, yes.
I think
Good point.
the major expenditure was gonna be that fencing project,
Okay.
because I think that was presented.
Additional
One of
fencing.
the board
Yes.
members asked, can we take that out of any, certainly we can.
And we may have some small things trickle in to close out some small invoices, but other than that, that 1.5 million is where we anticipate will be close to. And now on to Lake Belton High School. When you look at that budget, you'll see that we are at 125 million for the total budget.
So when we first did the bond, was it 121 something, and we've added some things to get it up to there?
So
Or am I
this,
misremembering?
this is the final, or the budget that the architects provided as of May of 2018.
Okay.
So this was after the GC had gone out. So this was what was approved in the GMP proposal
Right.
in May of 2018. So some numbers did
Separate from the
change.
bond, we'd already passed the bond to have the money to be able to go out and do the,
Yes.
I got you, we passed more.
So that's that's the original budget amount.
Okay.
And as of December 16th, we were at about almost about $88 million in expenditures. And our remaining budget is about 38 million. But I want to say, there's always a caveat to every number that I give you all, that we are still very early in the process, even though it doesn't seem like it, but we still are very early in this Lake Belton High School project. So the activity compared to the budget, while we anticipate that we will have some money left over, I think it's too early in the game to say whether we will have 5 million or 10 million, You know, those numbers can fluctuate so much between now and the end of the project, just based on if there are any unknowns or if we decide to do anything different. But I do want to draw your attention to the middle right. If you look at the interest income, we have earned almost $4 million in interest income, and that is not allocated to a project at this point. So we do anticipate that we will have at least that $4 million remaining, and that's assuming that everything comes in as anticipated. So we can say that we anticipate having $4 million left, and I think that's pretty good. Again, we want to make it clear that we don't go out and ask for our taxpayers to approve the bond just because there's money out there. It's a strategic process, and there are a lot of unknowns in the bond. We're working on estimates that were provided to us probably 5 years ago. And so contingency is built into the bond budgets, and we don't know how much we're going to have remaining. But it's, at this point, it's safe to say that there's going to be at least $4 million and then some. Okay?
Alright, now, and then this is just one side of the house.
Yes.
This is not an S side of the house. So then there's an M&O side of the house that we know that we have a fund balance there, and you heard about that in the audit report. And so,
So let's move to Lake Belton High School and how it looks in terms of our consumables. And other bond items that we are going to procure. And this list has been summarized because I looked at it and it's 161 pages total. But
Thank you.
this is the summary, and I want to take time to personally thank the purchasing department for compiling this list, working with all of the departments and everyone to make sure that we try to capture as much as we can in the building of this school. And the departments have been great to work with, but Cynthia has been awesome in making sure that this budget is compiled. I know
I
she's
will agree
losing
with
sleep
that.
at
Let me
night.
tell you what's the most detailed lady I've ever worked with.
Yes.
You gotta have one of those.
So what this summary shows us is by department, the types of items that need to be procured, the procurement method, and the source of funds. Because there's something that I think we all need to understand, and some people, it's sometimes miscommunicated. When you open a high school or a new campus, whether it's high school or not, you have some costs that need to be incurred for that campus that you cannot pay for out of bond. And while you do have costs that may qualify to be paid for out of the bond, you may not choose to utilize bond funding for some items as well. So there's that flip side. But the most important thing to note is that not every cost associated with an opening of a new school can be charged to the bond. We have to incur some local costs that we need to plan to cover. And that's why we talked about the money that we had allocated or set aside in fund balance to open those new schools. Those amounts were just the estimates. I tried to borrow from experience in opening schools in other districts, but that was years and years ago. And also the district philosophy in terms of what we purchase here can be a little bit different than other districts. So with that said, if you flip over to the back page, you'll see that we have for bond funds, the items on this list total to over $8 million. We have in that budget for FF&E, and it's on this page, 3.39 million for FF&E, and for technology, the same amount, 3.39, so about $6.8 million. And we're already at $8 million of items that can be procured using bond funds, and this amount does not include technology. We're still working on identifying what we can use or what is needed in terms of technology. Although we currently have about $500,000 in items, technology items that are encumbered, and those are the access points and some NetSync items that we have right now. So I'm saying this to say that if you take the budget of the $6.8 million and you look at what we could pay for based on this list out of the bond funds, we're going to be over budget, basically. But that's not uncommon. And I don't think there's cause for concern because we talked about that additional $4 million in interest income that we could definitely use. And we do anticipate that there's going to be some money left over, just in the GMP as well. So I don't think there's a lot of cause for concern there. The other thing is the consumables budget. That is general fund. Those are the items that general fund can be used for. That's $1.7 million so far on this sheet. But one piece that's missing is the instructional materials, the curriculum. They are still refining those numbers. So as soon as we get those numbers, we will add that amount to this consumables budget amount. We set aside $1 million in general fund to help cover these costs. But again, we have some additional funds available that we were able to set aside because of House Bill 3. So again, I don't have any concern that we can meet these requests without having any financial constraints. So if you look at this list though, you'll see the departments that are listed on here, and I can say that the detail behind this list, there is not anything in here that I think would be considered excessive. In putting the list together, the purchasing department tried to look at what's available right now at Belton High School and to make sure that Lake Belton High School is, has equivalent items that we're buying.
Amen.
You know, it's going to be newer, but it's just making sure that they have equivalent access. So, that's where we are.
And I guess, if I remember correctly, we're about 70 to 75% complete at the Lake Belton High School, right?
Yes.
So we're getting closer to being able, maybe, the next couple of meetings to maybe moving forward with thinking about some other projects down the road. Once some of these solidifies, that kind of what we're thinking?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
No, you go first.
We have a meeting scheduled, we have an auditor that is looking at different things. We have a meeting scheduled with Parker Cox. One of the things we've asked them to do is bring in the uncommitted funds, so we can begin that discussion at that time.
So, but with the approval of the $3.5 million and these projects going on, I still feel like we're doing really good, and we don't really need to push the envelope at this point.
Right.
Okay, so we're in a good place there. So,
One thing though that I would like for you to start the conversation tonight, and I told Ty today I was hoping to have a little time to work on a little bit of a strategic plan, but I just didn't have it today. But I'd like to hear from you, and very briefly, I'll give you a starting point of things that, on a facility strategic plan, that you see coming up in the future, and just go for it. And you can work with it later. You know, we've talked about possible acquisition of land, so that's one. But I really want you to spend a few minutes, and I don't want y'all to stay too long because I know you're tired, but telling me some of those things that you think are gonna come up, and then I will start putting it into some type of a plan.
well, I think right off the bat, the two wings that we've talked about at Carver and at Chisholm Trail are gonna be needed based on our last demographic report. I think we really need to start working those things pretty good, just right offhand.
And possible attendance rezoning that might go with that
With
for
that,
just
Go-
skiers.
Yeah, yeah.
Excuse me.
Those are the first two that came to my mind when you mentioned that.
And I think what goes hand in hand with that, because it involves the rezoning, because if we want to do it, we want to do it all at once, is the repurposing of Leon Heights to either the BEX or the Head Start program.
Yeah, because
I don't remember which program it is that could fit, but one of them could fit in that. Those kids could be dispersed to the other campuses.
based on what Deanna was talking about on Monday, we're getting closer to capacity over at Bex, and about 6 or 7 of those rooms are being occupied with Head Start right now. So it
Yes.
would be a neat idea to maybe have that facility over there to house that.
But if we're gonna do it, wouldn't we want to try to coincide it with, we're gonna redistrict, but now these kids that we're going to this school are gonna go over here?
Yeah, I would say.
240
You wanna redistrict as little as possible.
Right,
so-
240 something kids?
Let me make sure I'm clear, you're saying Bex, move it to
No,
Head Start.
Head Start. To
Head
give us,
Start.
Yeah,
we
so
can have more capacity.
free up room
at Bex.
where
To
Bex
Leon
is.
Heights.
Yeah, and then instead of closing Leon Heights as a school, just repurpose it because we need the room anyways. And we already have the building and the land.
I'm gonna give you capacity on that.
And then something else too, the old gym, I haven't been in there in years over there, we're over here. I know we're just got a bunch of junk in there, but is there any way that could be used with our DAEP?
Well, some of it is.
Some of it is.
And I walked through there this week, I didn't realize how nice those rooms came out, so they really came out well. We've got some issues with that, we've got some asbestos in the gym itself, not anywhere near the kids. So, David is getting us some numbers, well, actually 3 numbers. One is demolishing the gym, just having a pad sitting there. The second one is demo along with paving paved parking, and the third one would be demo along with gravel. And then you can pick and choose what you wish to do. Whenever I realized that there was asbestos in there, it went way up on my priority list, I'll be honest. Because it is used for storage, but I feel like every time that someone goes in there, that's not the setting we want our people in.
I thought we already had a plan to demolish the gym.
Well, it was about 1.1 million, if I remember right, the whole project, to get a parking lot right there, 'cause that, and they were gonna move some of the,
And that's
this
before we realized it was asbestos.
So
yeah.
that's-
I even got a abatement.
abatements are
We're not
expensive.
debating them
I
all.
taught PE in that gym though, I wonder if that's why I cough
You'll
sometimes.
be okay.
Could be. Brett spraying Roundup.
Yeah.
We'll get you in on all the lawsuits.
The other part of that is, you know, we have renovated part of that so that DAP can use that, and that's worked out really well.
Those
Not
rooms
DAP,
over to
it's,
the
New Tech.
South
Newtek, yeah.
side of it, yeah,
Yeah,
that hallway.
and we really don't wanna lose that, because that's really nice classroom space, it's come out really, really well. And they've just got to have it at this point in time. So, you know, that kind of complicates things, because there is obviously a shared wall in there. So, yes, it is on the docket, but that absolutely needs to be on here. The movement of special ed over possibly to
Old admin.
Sixth Street, I think is another one.
That one, I was gonna mention that, cause Deanna's brought that up, moving the special ed over there, that seemed like a no-brainer,
Yeah,
if we could figure that one out, cause they really need the space, and that would free up some stuff here.
Yeah.
And then another one that I'm thinking about is, where could we find some capacity for the expansion of our DAEP to include elementary kids, to give those campuses some relief? We really haven't worked that program.
yeah, we were talking this week on that one.
I finally got to see
Yeah.
our DAP, finally got to go in, we did gifts for the teachers, and I was thinking about that while we were there.
And I stayed afterwards, and Sandy here, and I walked and looked at classrooms, and David and I are gonna meet with Sandy tomorrow, actually. She is marvelous, absolutely
She's
marvelous.
doing a great job.
She really is. But, on the elementary, we don't have an elementary child over there right now, we might here in the near future. She's got some spaces, and Robert and I visited about this also, that she wants to put some partitions in. And then David and I talked too, and to subdivide some of those rooms, and we were looking at reventing and pretty costly infrastructure types of things. So the visit tomorrow is to see can we have a cheaper solution. The concern that Robert had, and it's a really valid one, is, you know, right now that's our need, is to get spaces, additional little spaces, because we've got a lot of kids right now who are doing one-on-one, not a lot, we have quite a few kids that are one-on-one over there at DAP.
That
So,
surprised me a lot,
yeah.
to go in a class and there'd be one kid, two kids,
Mhm.
next class has 5 kids, next class might be kind of full, and then the rest would have 1.
Yeah.
And be like, it's a very strange grouping, how they do
It's
it
very,
there.
it's just a whole
It's
other
all
world.
individualized, I
It
guess.
is, very much, and you know, those one-on-ones are because that's what that kid requires. So if we make a lot of really small spaces for those one-on-ones, if in the future they don't need all those one-on-ones, then you've got, then you're lost. And so we just wanna look to see what is our most flexible solution. They've got a conference room that's large, and Sandy really wants to divide it into 3. We may wanna look at, again, some type of a intermediary solution. Then she's got one more room 100, I think, that she wants to put into 2. So that's the discussion right now. As far as overall space, they probably have the square footage. It's the configuration of it that,
Making it more workable.
you know, hopefully we don't exceed.
How
the
many are
capacity.
there right now, and what's the typical number, like an average number?
I've just sent that to you,
Oh,
so
you
y'all
did?
will have that
Okay.
for tomorrow, and the ethnic breakdown, I think, was another question on that one.
And then the only other thing that I can think of right offhand is 2 things. Number one is we need to revisit the swim center again. I think with Temple putting that 5.4 million thing out there last couple of weeks, I think that kind of heightened the concern to the swim community, and we probably need to look at that a little bit closer. And then, small thing, there's a temporary fence over by the bus barn. Wonder if what it would take to put like a 4-foot real fence there, make it look a little bit better over there.
We could do that, certainly. The problem is the employees, whatever type fence, they have a tendency to back into it. So
They just put that up to keep them from driving across that property.
we may have to just do like a pipe rail fence or something. So if they do hit it, they'll know they hit it.
Just something, just kind of
With
looks.
the bus or with their car?
Cars.
Their cars.
These
Not the
are our
buses.
bus drivers.
And that's a big problem over there.
drivers.
With the amount of drivers they have.
They don't have enough parking spaces.
Right.
You go there at 2:30 in the afternoon,
Yeah.
they're parked on the grass, on the roof, I mean, where are they?
Yeah.
Well, I remember at some point within the last year, we had talked about that property that we had out by purchasing. And then at some point, maybe having a second bus barn, or maybe just moving the facility altogether. Maybe that's something that we need to do a little analyzing
I
on.
just wrote that on.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, so, I don't know if Andrew talked to you about, the new high school, if there's a place for a bus facility out there. We wanna know if we could, if there's sidewalks coming out of Windmill Farms to the high school, and I told him there were not. And I really don't think we want kids walking, high school kids walking that way. But he was talking about the cost to run the bus out there, if he could. Do we
That would
not
be-
still have that little triangle of property, or did we sell that?
We always did a,
Yeah, we did some kind of.
we didn't sell it, we
Was it
traded
just like
that.
the easement, that street through there,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
well, we traded that, and that's where we also were able to pick up some of the stretch that goes down the other side of the
Yeah.
property that let us open up more parking spaces.
Mhm.
And there was that little trade-off.
So that could be a possible better solution than, rather than going south with an additional bus barn, maybe trying to figure out a way to put it north.
If we have
Since
some.
that high school's out there.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a satellite facility, it probably should be north, because that's where the density of
Right.
I agree.
Kids
Well, I
are,
think we
but-
need to look into that too.
Another one that, I'm not sure where it will fall, it's kind of a mix of things, is technology period. Because we've talked about, you know, with the new high school coming on board, and where we went ahead, and we want to stay with the iPad devices or start migrating to a different platform. And so, actually, I added that to our agenda for next time, because that would be a great place to discuss where we're heading with that with you guys. It has a kind of a C&I component, because of obviously the software side of it. The hardware side is really a facilities issue and wiring issue and things like that, and I think that's one that we really need to talk about. So we may wanna have Daryl come in next time and give a briefing on that. I think that'd be excellent information for you guys heading into this.
And then something else too, I think about this stuff. When we do get our new high school up and running, you know, I know we're gonna be sharing the Friday night facility. You know, maybe start looking at the cost of changing out one of the end zones and putting a more neutral thing in the middle, that kind of thing. You know, finding some monies and some estimates to do something like that.
At Tiger Field.
Can we do just an end zone to where both of them just
Yeah,
hit Belton on them?
we've kind of been thinking about this for a while.
Yeah.
And kind of looking at different, you know, timings, you know, when they start playing there, what year is that field gonna be on? And there's really kind of three, you know, this is what we had came to last year. No decisions have been made, but there's, you know, there's 3 or 4 different ways to look at it. Is one, you can replace the center and the end zone, and the just the off the hip estimate that Field Turf gave us was probably about $25,000 each. So it'd probably be about a $50,000 project to change the B in the middle and change one of the other end zones. Some things that kind of complicate that, I think the end zone that says Tigers is actually on the scoreboard end, and so if you wanted a Bronco Tiger thing, now you'd be kind of weird. So the second thing would be, you know, that field's gonna be on about year 7 or 8 by the time they start playing there. So would you just wanna go ahead and just say, let's just rip it up and replace the whole thing? We're probably 2 to 3 years ahead of when we would normally have to do it, but rather than spend 50 and then turn around and spend 400 2 to 3 years later, would you rather just go ahead and just do a new, or just would it be, just do nothing and live with it and use that $50,000 somewhere else to benefit those kids over at school, and when it's time to tear it up, put a new one down and have it the way you want it. So, I mean, there's several ways to look at it, and I think it's kind of the, you know, number one, what does the board want, what does the community want, where is the urgency on those things?
So Lake Belton will not use that field for how many years?
They will start playing, they'll probably play around no more than 5 games there in 2021, but it'll be a non-UIL year. That's that outlaw
That
year that
outlaw
we've
year.
talked about.
Right.
And their first full UIL district playoff season will be 2022.
So
And
we've
at
got
that time,
3
that
years.
field will be That, I believe that'll be the eighth
That'd be
season
nice.
on that field,
That'd be
15,
nice.
16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That'll be the eighth season of the field.
Okay.
And so those fields usually go 8 to 12, I mean, it's what you
Yeah,
hear.
10 years.
It's a good field, I think we'll get a full 12 out of it, but it's,
Do y'all feel like that the time is gonna come though where the community is going to demand that they play at Lake Belton High School?
Mhm.
That it's gonna be a full
I hope not.
competitive field there?
There's too many examples across the state of multiple high schools, especially 4 or less, playing on a neutral site. You know, Killeen High School's been playing at Leo Buckley, and Killeen High School uses that for practice every day.
So
But-
how many schools play on Leo Buckley?
There's 4 high schools over there.
Oh, wow.
Now,
Round Rock?
when 5 comes on board, that's gonna be a different,
Round Rock has 2 stadiums
Yeah.
for 5
Yeah.
schools.
For 5 schools,
I
yeah,
guess-
it's common, it's actually
To
very
high
common.
schools?
well, in Killeen, I think, didn't it already happen? Haven't they already passed a bond for number 5? That lands out there south of
It's
town.
Not for the stadium
Very
yet, though,
common.
the stadium's upgrades are on this new bond in this spring, but.
Yeah, but good grief, they put
And
like
that
60,
includes all the
50 something.
JV and the,
They'll do all that at Lake Belton.
Yeah, they've got a,
Okay.
what we call the junior high field,
It'll be
already set up at Lake
Yeah.
Belton.
I will
2,000
say, I do think they're gonna need us another set of bleachers on the other side.
Well, the way they built it, they can drop them in there.
I think
The
that's-
light poles, everything is set to where you could go to Sturdy Seal or whoever and have.
One thing that is common though for sub-varsity football and soccer is for everybody to sit on the same side. I mean, there's very few places that are Thursday night, kids go where the fans aren't all, it's a matter of supervision and gate workers and everything else. Typically for JV, they all sit on the same side, so.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I've been asking y'all about that, because I just know, you know, sitting next to some of the knuckleheads, and you don't wanna have to do it at your own home field, but I understand that's just how it's
Yeah.
done.
That's what we do at Tiger Field now
Yeah.
for
And it's
our
easier to
home, our
maintain.
Thursday night games, everyone sits on the same side.
Yeah, freshmen.
so.
Yeah,
They all sit on
freshmen
the
and
same
JV.
So are there any
Is
other,
this one other thing in regard to the field house, or, you know, where they get dressed and all of that? So when Broncos come in, are they gonna have their own?
Mhm.
yeah,
Okay.
They're gonna have their own locker room. Actually, it's already been built. We
Yeah.
built it in the renovation last summer
it's across
of the,
on the south,
Mhm.
east side.
it's in the soccer baseball. There's
Yeah.
about
They've been, yeah.
I don't know, probably about 700 or 800 square foot locker room that's designated just for Lake Belton football when they play there.
Something I learned when I was in Killeen is, originally, the schools would go into Killeen High School's locker room, that was a bad idea. Things didn't smell very good for the guys showing up Monday morning.
Yeah.
Other things that I've added based upon this conversation was, emergency operations planning, if there's anything that comes out of that needs to be incorporated for safety and security, special education to make sure we're ADA compliant on everything right now. Electronic storage, because that is actually a facilities issue. Playground equipment, that's come up in here before, thank you. Career and Tech Center, big problems. Press box, big problems. I put the turf rotations, and then just rotation cycles overall is one that probably, you know, needs to be categorized.
I think I saw we're gonna start on just the little reno, like the $40,000 or $60,000 press box thing in February, right?
I put also buses in white plate, and not just on rotations, but to ensure that we're on schedule on those, and if there are any other needs on that. So what I'll say right now is, we've got a list of probably about 30 items, is I will send those back out to you as far as the minutes, and then please add, David, Jennifer, Robert, Mike, y'all add too, and then we'll try to get a comprehensive list, and then y'all can go through and start prioritizing. We'll put that into the beginnings of a plan, and with your new superintendent, you can take that forward and move. Okay. Jennifer, one more thing?
Last thing for the strategic planning piece, you asked in the last meeting about debt capacity, so here you have it. There are 3 pages, and at the top, you will see projected AG test capacity in August of 2021, August of 2023 on the second page, and August of 2025 on the third page. Do you not have it?
Yeah, I think I've got some, there's 23 and 25.
More light reading for the roof.
Okay, so I just want to point out some things briefly. These numbers are very, very preliminary. There are a lot of assumptions that are assumed in these. One of the biggest being the estimated growth at 5% versus 2.5%. The second being the state assistance that we will receive. We are a district that gets assistance, EDA assistance from the state, but the longer we wait, that assistance will drop due to our increased property values. And if our property values come in at more than the 5%, our EDA will drop even sooner. So that's going to be a challenge, and what our EDA does is allow us more debt capacity, because we get money to pay off our bonds. So I wanted to bring that point up. And again, interest rates. That's a huge assumption, because right now, if you look at 2021, it's based on an interest rate of 3.96. 2023 is based on 4%, and 2025 is based on 4%. But we all know that that those can fluctuate widely. So again, just take a look at this, and right now, if we went out in May of 2021 and sold bonds soon thereafter, then we would be looking at a debt capacity of $100 million. And 2023, it rises to 119, 2025, it goes to 128. One thing I do want to point out is that our debt capacity is not increasing a lot, because this model also assumes that we are dropping our tax rate when we can.
Right.
And I know that, hopefully you'll remember me talking about as a fast growth district. One of the things that, as a board and as district administrators, we need to talk about is looking at that tax rate and deciding whether or not to lower it when we can, or trying to maintain it at the level that it is now, so that we can increase that debt capacity in the future.
And really, do our stakeholders really get to feel it when we do decrease it because of the values going up? It's, I mean,
Possibly not.
yeah.
Not
I mean, it's what
always.
happened to me this year
You're
in my
right.
personal house.
No, you're right, and this was a significant decrease
Yes.
this year, and a lot of taxpayers, or some taxpayers unfortunately, did not get to see that huge cut because of the fact that property values increased. But I can say, if property values increased and we didn't cut the tax rate, you would see a huge or larger increase.
So if they keep the tax rate where it's at on the INS side, then basically you'd be paying off your debt earlier, which would give you capacity down the line.
Yes,
Which, being fast growth, is probably something to really consider.
yes. And we did have that, we had a decent cut this year, but if you look at this 4 cent, just on the 2021 model, we possibly could be able to lower it by 4 cents, but then if we went out for a bond, we'd have to raise it by
Right
10
back up.
cents the next year. You know, is that something we will want to do with our taxpayers? So, just again, these models are very, very, they're based on a lot of assumptions, and the further out we get, the less accurate that it is, but again, they're for illustration purposes only, but I think it does tell us one thing, that we see our state assistance is going to drop, and eventually it's going to phase out.
So
Well,
the
I
need,
appreciate you doing
yeah,
this.
the need for alternative plans becomes important.
Dr. Muller, did you have anything to say about this?
No.
Okay. So, thanks to Specialized Public Finance, and Jennifer Ritter and her team.
Yeah, that's a lot right there, so thank you so much. So, think we've had another,
I've got one
You-
thing that
one
we're gonna
thing-
bring
oh, that's right.
in January.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry I didn't bring enough copies for everybody, but over at the swim
Oh,
center,
that's fine.
you know, we've been, doing a lot of things over there. There's 2 more components. So the strainers have been changed and the valves have been changed out this week, and all that's working great now. The filters need to be changed, and we've talked about putting in the UV system, which would eliminate the need for a lot of the chemical. So, those 2 items, together, well, the filters are $89,500, and then the UV system is $60,000 for the 2 of those. You'll remember we added some money to the swim center in our capital budget, to $350. So with these items, we're only gonna spend about 238, is that true? So,
So it's already budgeted,
It's already
but because it's
budgeted.
over 50K, then it will need to come to the board.
correct,
Okay. Like I said, I think we need to do whatever we can
yeah.
at the swim center for sure.
And I tell you, I don't know that anybody's told me recently that the chemical level's been staying pretty constant.
Well, let me just ask one question for clarification. Was this included in the capital projects? I missed that, David.
Well, in one of these meetings, we went back, remember we added some items,
Mm-hmm,
and the swim center was one of them,
mm-hmm.
but we increased that money.
Yes,
We approved 350,000,
Right.
because that's what we thought, it was to replace the equipment and all of that.
Right.
And with this, it would just be a 238.
238. If
So-
we do these two things, that should be it.
were the items that were approved in that capital project listing, because that list was approved, we have not been taking expenditures over 50 from that list?
Yeah, aggregate dollar amount was approved, it wasn't a detailed list.
Okay,
The
all right.
base is what
Okay.
makes up that.
I think we just called it swim equipment, because you had like
Yeah,
bags holding stuff in place and
Yeah,
all
there were
that.
several different things that we were looking
Yeah.
at.
just like the baseball field lights.
And that was an addition,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was added in,
Correct.
yes.
so I think we take those back.
When you get to your decisions regarding the swim center, you were talking about in Temple, when they're doing that swim center. You know, their pool was truly underground, the whole pool is, and so you probably saw they're gonna wipe out everything on top and then rebuild on top, so you get, $45 million price tag. I don't know if you'll be able to do that with this pool, because it is half underground and then half above, because it is a raised pool deck. And, so you may be more restricted in that, you may get a more expensive price tag, but it's just because you can't wipe out the top and rebuild on top. So just know when you get to that point, it's gonna be more complicated just because of the current build. Well, it was a good move at the point in time, you did have a
At the time,
pool.
it served
You
for
did have a pool, and it has served a pretty good lifespan right now. Is it 11 years old, 12 years old? 13.
Yeah.
So, it really has served you well. There's gonna be a point though where you will have to make those decisions, but just know you've got a weird build there just because of how it was built.
It's just the issue of shutting down an entire program, basically, while you have to do that, or making it very inconvenient.
Well, that was part of the thing
But every
in
swim
the
probably
telegram
wants
was
to do
the Temple was still trying to figure out what they were gonna do.
In the interim.
That's just part of the deal.
Yeah, it is part of the deal.
Yeah.
But you do have facilities in the area, you have another school district that you can use theirs, that may be something that Temple considers, I don't know. You've got other pools in the area that you can use, so you may do, they will do as much as they can, obviously, over a summer.
Right.
But, so you're probably not looking at a whole year the kids are out of the pool, but you may be looking at a half year.
If, I'd like to make one more point about the smart sensors too, that I kind of forgot earlier, is that, when we talked about what they do and kind of how we want to roll it out and how we want to phase it in, but we didn't really probably communicate the why as well. And, we kind of envision these smart sensors as something similar to your extracurricular drug testing, the use of drug dogs, when we really want it to be a deterrent to try to have students not exhibit that behavior, because as we're seeing and as you see in the news and everywhere else, I mean there's health consequences to this, but there's also disciplinary consequences, and we really just want to take this as just one of a piece of an education component, and just trying to give kids a reason not to exhibit that behavior in the first place. And it's not a gotcha deal where we want to see how many vapors we can round up by putting these sensors in. It's really to use another tool at our disposal to discourage them from even doing it in the first place. And I think it'll be effective, but based on the research we've done and the schools we've talked to, we think it'll be an effective deterrent, much more so than it will be something that, where we're boosting our numbers of kids that get punitive consequences from it. So
That would be great.
that's important to us, because we would prefer to not get in this position in the first
Right.
place where kids are getting in trouble for having these devices at school.
And I have one more thing.
Well, just one, I'm sorry, one quick thing, because everybody in Bell County's asked me this question. So the traffic signal on Highway 317 and FM 2483 will be live on January the 7th.
Oh, awesome.
Just drove by there
Dropping
today.
off kids at North Belton, so much easier.
Nice. Jennifer?
So, in an effort to improve the procurement process for our consumables items, because some of these items need to be ordered very quickly, and we may not have time to wait another month for a board meeting. I plan to bring a list similar to this. I'll try to provide more detail in terms of the line items to the board in January for expenditures over 50 for each of these categories, so that we can be able to procure the items in a timely fashion.
Just get it going.
Thank you for bringing
All
that
right.
in. Boss?
All right, well, I just again want to say what an honor it is for us to be in here, to be able to be a part of working with the administration on these things. Man, it's been awesome, so thank y'all so much, and it is 5:06, and the meeting is adjourned.
Merry Christmas.